Elena Martinez pressed her fingers against the cold window glass, feeling the vibrations of raindrops cascading down the surface. At 19, she had never seen a sunset, never witnessed the colors her younger sister Maria often described in whispered conversations. Born blind, Elena navigated her world through touch, sound, and an extraordinary ability to sense the emotions of others around her. The small apartment in the rundown neighborhood of East Los Angeles had been her entire universe. Her father, Miguel, worked 3 jobs just to keep food on the table and pay for the mounting medical bills from her mother's cancer treatment 2 years ago. The smell of her mother's favorite lavender soap still lingered in the tiny bathroom, a constant reminder of the woman who had taught Elena to find beauty in darkness. "Elena, come here." Her father's voice carried a weight she had never heard before. His footsteps were heavier than usual, dragging across the worn wooden floor. She could hear Maria shifting uncomfortably on the old couch, the springs creaking under her nervous movements. Elena made her way carefully to the living room, her hand trailing along the familiar path of the wall. The apartment felt different today, charged with an electricity that made her skin prickle. Her father's breathing was labored, and she could detect the faint smell of alcohol on his clothes mixed with the industrial soap from the factory where he worked nights. "Sit down, mija." Miguel's voice cracked slightly. Elena settled into her usual spot on the threadbare armchair, the one with the loose spring that poked her left shoulder. The silence stretched between them like a taut wire, broken only by the distant sound of traffic and Maria's quiet sniffling. Miguel cleared his throat several times before speaking. "There's a man who wants to meet you. His name is Alexander Blackwood. He's very wealthy, and he's made us an offer." Elena's hands instinctively gripped the armrest. She had heard whispers in their neighborhood about wealthy men who preyed on desperate families, but she never imagined her own father would entertain such thoughts. "What kind of offer, Papa?" "He wants to marry you, Elena. He'll pay off all our debts, set Maria up for college, and make sure we never struggle again." The words tumbled out quickly, as if saying them faster would make them less painful. Maria's gasp was audible from across the room. "Papa, no! You can't sell Elena like she's property!" Elena felt the world tilt beneath her. Marriage to a stranger, a wealthy man who saw her as something to be purchased. Her mind raced through possibilities, each more terrifying than the last. "How do you know this man, Papa? Why would someone like him want someone like me?" Miguel's chair creaked as he leaned forward. She could feel his presence closer now, could smell the desperation that clung to him like cologne. "He came to the factory last week. Said he'd been watching our family, knew about our situation. He claims he wants a wife who will appreciate his generosity, someone who won't want him just for his looks or status." The cruel irony wasn't lost on Elena, a blind girl who couldn't see his wealth, couldn't be dazzled by material possessions. She would be grateful for any kindness, any crumb of affection, the perfect wife for a man who wanted control disguised as charity. Elena stood up abruptly, her hands trembling. "I need some air." She navigated to the small balcony, feeling the cool evening breeze against her face. The sounds of the city enveloped her. Car horns, distant music from a neighbor's radio, children playing in the courtyard below. This chaos, this imperfect symphony, was her home. Behind her, she could hear her father and Maria arguing in hushed tones. Maria's voice was fierce, protective, while their father's responses grew increasingly defensive. Elena knew the numbers as well as anyone. The overdue rent notices, the disconnection warnings from utility companies, the medical debt that continued to grow despite their mother being gone. A memory surfaced of her mother's last conversation with her. "Elena, you have a gift," she had whispered, her hand weak but warm in Elena's grasp. "You see people's hearts in ways others never can. Don't let anyone convince you that your blindness makes you less valuable. Promise me." Elena had promised, but promises felt fragile now, like soap bubbles that burst at the slightest touch. She thought about Alexander Blackwood, this mysterious billionaire who had apparently been watching their family. What kind of man observed a struggling family and saw an opportunity rather than people in need of genuine help? The balcony door slid open behind her, and Maria's presence filled the small space. "Elena, we'll figure something else out. I'll drop out of school, get a job. We don't need his money." Elena turned toward her sister's voice. "And watch Papa work himself to death? Watch you sacrifice your dreams because I'm a burden?" "You're not a burden." Maria's voice was fierce. "You're my sister, and you deserve better than being sold to some rich creep who thinks he can buy a wife." Elena reached out and found Maria's hand, squeezing it gently. At 16, Maria had already seen too much hardship, had grown up too fast, caring for their sick mother and supporting their struggling father. Elena couldn't bear the thought of her sister sacrificing her future too. Inside the apartment, Miguel was pacing now, his footsteps creating a familiar rhythm against the floorboards. Elena could hear him muttering prayers in Spanish, asking their mother's spirit for guidance. The decision hung over their family like storm clouds, and Elena knew that whatever choice they made would change everything forever. The rain continued to fall, and Elena listened to its rhythm, trying to find peace in the sound that had always comforted her. Tomorrow, she would have to give Alexander Blackwood an answer. Tonight, she would hold on to the last moments of a life that, while difficult, was still entirely her own. The black limousine pulled up outside their apartment building at exactly 3 in the afternoon. Elena heard its engine purring like a satisfied cat, a sound so foreign to their neighborhood that curious neighbors began gathering on their stoops and balconies. She sat by the window, her fingers pressed against the glass, feeling the vibrations of excited conversations and footsteps of people coming to witness this unusual spectacle. "He's here," Miguel announced unnecessarily. His voice carried a mixture of hope and guilt that made Elena's stomach twist. She had spent the entire night awake, weighing her options, and had finally reached a decision that surprised even herself. She would meet this Alexander Blackwood, but not as a victim being sold. She would meet him as a woman making her own choice. Elena stood and smoothed her best dress, a simple blue cotton that Maria had helped her pick out years ago. It was clean and modest, nothing like what she imagined billionaires were accustomed to seeing. Her long, dark hair was braided neatly down her back, and she wore her mother's small silver cross around her neck, the only piece of jewelry they hadn't sold. The knock on the door was confident, neither too soft nor too aggressive. Elena heard her father's nervous footsteps as he crossed the room, the creak of the hinges as the door opened, and then a voice that seemed to fill their small space with unexpected warmth. "Mr. Martinez, I'm Alexander Blackwood. Thank you for agreeing to this meeting." The voice was younger than Elena had expected, probably early 30s, with a slight accent she couldn't quite place. There was something genuine in his tone that caught her off guard. She had prepared herself for arrogance, for the cold entitlement she associated with wealthy men, but this voice carried an undercurrent of nervousness that made her curious. "Please, come in," Miguel stammered. "Elena, Maria, come meet Mr. Blackwood." Elena made her way to the living room, Maria's protective presence beside her. As they entered, she immediately noticed several things. The man's cologne was expensive but not overwhelming. His breathing was steady but slightly elevated, suggesting he was nervous. And most surprisingly, he stood up as she entered the room, something many people forgot to do around her. "Elena," Alexander's voice was softer now, respectful. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me. I know this situation is unusual." Elena extended her hand in greeting, and when Alexander took it, she was struck by several observations. His hands were clean and soft, but there were calluses on his palms, surprising for someone who supposedly lived in luxury. His grip was gentle, not possessive, and he released her hand immediately, rather than holding it too long. "Mr. Blackwood," Elena replied, keeping her voice steady. "I'd like to speak with you privately, if you don't mind." She heard Miguel's sharp intake of breath and Maria's whispered protest, but Alexander immediately agreed. "Of course. Perhaps we could walk outside? I noticed there's a small park nearby." Elena nodded, grabbed her white cane from beside the door, and allowed Alexander to guide her outside. As they walked, she noticed he matched her pace perfectly, neither rushing ahead nor walking so slowly that she felt patronized. He warned her about uneven sidewalks and curbs without making her feel helpless. The park was a small patch of green in their concrete neighborhood, with a few benches and a playground where children's laughter created a cheerful soundtrack. Alexander led her to a bench under what she could tell from the dappled sunlight was a large tree. "Elena," Alexander began, then paused. "I want you to know that your father didn't approach me. I approached him." This was not what Elena had expected. "Why?" Alexander was quiet for a long moment, and Elena could hear him shifting on the bench, the rustle of expensive fabric. "Because I've been watching your family for months, and I've seen something remarkable." Elena's defenses immediately went up. "Watching us? That sounds rather creepy, Mr. Blackwood." "Please, call me Alex. And you're right, it does sound creepy when I put it like that." There was a self-deprecating humor in his voice that surprised her. "Let me explain. I volunteer at the hospital where your mother received treatment. I met you there several times, though we never spoke. I watched you comfort other patients, help elderly people navigate the hallways, translate for families who didn't speak English. You were remarkable." Elena remembered those long days at the hospital, the way she had tried to make herself useful while her mother underwent treatments. She had never noticed anyone paying particular attention to her. Alex continued. "I saw how you supported your family through the most difficult time of their lives. How you never complained, never showed self-pity, even when you were clearly exhausted and heartbroken. I saw a strength and kindness that I've rarely encountered." "So you decided to buy me?" Elena's voice carried an edge. "No," Alex said firmly. "I decided I wanted to know you better, but I knew our circumstances were too different for a conventional approach. A blind girl from East LA and a billionaire? You would have assumed I was either playing a game or offering charity. I needed a way to prove my sincerity." Elena turned toward his voice. "By offering to pay my family's debts in exchange for marriage? How is that proving sincerity rather than proving you think everything is for sale?" "Because I'm hoping you'll give me a chance to earn your respect and affection over time, rather than expecting it immediately. Because I'm willing to put everything in writing that protects your rights and independence. Because if you agree to marry me, it will be a partnership, not a purchase." Elena felt the warm sun on her face and listened to the sounds around them. Children playing, birds singing, the distant hum of traffic. This conversation was not going as she had anticipated. "Tell me about yourself, Alex. Not your money, not your offer. Tell me who you are." Alex shifted again, and she heard him take a deep breath. "I'm 32 years old. I inherited my wealth when my parents died in a car accident when I was 25. Before that, I worked construction, which explains these calluses you probably noticed. I have a dog named Charlie, who's probably destroying my housekeeper's flower garden right now. I read 3 books a week, I'm terrible at cooking, and I haven't had a real conversation with anyone in months because people see my bank account before they see me." Elena found herself smiling despite her reservations. "What kind of books do you read?" "Everything. Fiction, biographies, philosophy, science. I have a library in my house that I'd love to share with someone. It has books in Braille, too, because after I met you at the hospital, I started learning about resources for the visually impaired community." This admission made Elena's heart skip. "You learned Braille?" "I'm still learning. I'm not very good yet. But I wanted to understand your world better." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, and Elena processed this information. A wealthy man who worked construction, who learned Braille, who noticed her at the hospital not because of her blindness, but because of her character. It was either the most elaborate deception she had ever encountered, or perhaps there was more to Alexander Blackwood than she had assumed. "Elena," Alex said softly, "I'm not asking you to love me immediately. I'm asking for a chance. 6 months of getting to know each other, living in the same house but with complete independence for you. If after 6 months you want to leave, you'll have a divorce settlement that ensures you and your family are financially secure forever, no strings attached. If you decide to stay, it will be because you choose to, not because you have to." Elena realized she was holding her breath. "And if I say no right now?" "Then I'll still pay your family's medical debts anonymously, and we'll never see each other again. Your choice, Elena. It's entirely your choice." 3 weeks later, Elena stood in the marble foyer of Alexander's mansion, her white cane tapping against floors so polished she could hear her own echo. The house was enormous. She could tell from the way sounds traveled and bounced off distant walls. The air smelled of fresh flowers and expensive wood polish, a stark contrast to the familiar scents of her childhood home. "The main staircase is directly in front of you, about 15 feet, Alexander's voice came from her left. "There are 18 steps to the second floor with a landing halfway up. The banister is solid oak and there's a motion sensor light that comes on automatically." Elena appreciated his practical descriptions. Over the past 3 weeks of phone conversations and 2 more meetings, she had learned that Alex had an engineer's mind, always thinking about how things worked and how to make them better. He never described things as beautiful or magnificent, understanding that such words meant nothing to her. "Mrs. Chen, my housekeeper, has prepared the east wing for you," Alex continued. "You have your own bedroom, sitting room, and bathroom. There's also a small kitchen if you prefer to prepare your own meals, though Mrs. Chen is an excellent cook and would be happy to prepare anything you like." Elena nodded, still adjusting to the idea that she now lived in a house with wings and a housekeeper. The wedding ceremony had been small and practical, just the legal requirements met at City Hall with Miguel, Maria, and Alex's lawyer as witnesses. Maria had cried, though Elena suspected they were tears of worry rather than joy. A new sound caught her attention, the clicking of claws on marble, followed by excited panting. "Charlie?" she asked. "Yes, he's been waiting to meet you all morning," Alex said with obvious affection in his voice. "Charlie, gentle." Elena extended her hand and immediately felt a large, warm nose sniffing her palm, followed by a tentative lick. Based on the height and the sound of his breathing, she estimated Charlie was a large breed, probably a golden retriever or similar. "He's beautiful," she said, then laughed at herself. "I mean, he feels friendly." "He is beautiful, and you're right about the friendly part. He's also incredibly well-trained. Mrs. Chen spoils him terribly." As if summoned by her name, Elena heard the approach of soft-soled shoes and caught the scent of jasmine perfume mixed with something that smelled like fresh bread. "You must be Elena," a warm voice said with a slight Chinese accent. "I am Mrs. Chen. I've been taking care of this house and this man for 8 years, and I'm very happy you're here." Elena smiled and extended her hand, which Mrs. Chen took in both of hers. Her hands were small but strong, and Elena immediately liked her. "I've prepared lunch for you both," Mrs. Chen continued. "Nothing fancy, just soup and sandwiches. I thought you might be tired from the morning." Alex guided Elena through the house, describing the layout as they walked. The dining room had a table that could seat 12, but was currently set for 2 at one end. The kitchen was modern but warm, with what Alex described as a large island and windows that looked out over the garden. As they ate, Elena found herself relaxing slightly. The soup was delicious, some kind of vegetable broth with herbs she couldn't identify. Alex ate quietly, not trying to fill every silence with conversation, which she appreciated. "Tell me about your typical day," Elena said. I want to understand what life is like here. Alex set down his spoon. I usually wake up around 6, take Charlie for a run through the neighborhood, then spend the morning in my home office handling business calls and emails. I try to finish work by 3, so I have the rest of the day free. What kind of business? Real estate development, mostly. I inherited several properties from my parents, and over the years I've focused on developing affordable housing projects. It's not as profitable as luxury developments, but it feels more worthwhile. Elena was intrigued. Affordable housing? That's not what I expected from a billionaire. My parents were both social workers before they inherited money from my grandfather, Alex explained. They never forgot where they came from, and they taught me that wealth is a responsibility, not just a privilege. Most of my work focuses on creating quality housing for working families. This revelation shifted something in Elena's understanding of the man she had married. Is that why you noticed my family? Because we represented the kind of people you're trying to help? Alex was quiet for a moment. Partly, yes, but also because you reminded me of my mother. She had this ability to see the best in everyone, to make people feel valued and heard. You did that at the hospital, even when you were dealing with your own grief. After lunch, Alex showed Elena to her rooms in the East Wing. The bedroom was large, with what he described as floor-to-ceiling windows facing the garden. The bed was queen-sized with a firm mattress, and there was a comfortable reading chair by the windows. Mrs. Chen arranged for some books in Braille. To be delivered, Alex said. They're on the shelf by the chair. There's also a computer with screen-reading software if you're interested. Elena explored the room methodically, mapping it in her mind. Everything was thoughtfully arranged, with clear pathways and no obstacles. Someone had clearly consulted experts on accessibility. Alex, she said, turning toward where she thought he was standing. This is all very kind, but I need you to understand something. I'm grateful for what you're doing for my family, but I won't be a decorative wife who smiles and stays quiet. If this arrangement is going to work, I need to feel useful. What do you have in mind? Elena had been thinking about this since agreeing to the marriage. I want to work. I have a degree in social work that I never got to use because I was caring for my mother. I want to be involved in your housing projects, working with the families who will live in them. Alex was quiet for so long that Elena wondered if she had overstepped. Finally, he spoke. Elena, that's exactly what I was hoping you'd say. That evening, Elena sat in her new bedroom, speaking on the phone with Maria. Through the open windows, she could hear the sounds of the neighborhood, much quieter than their old apartment, with the gentle rustling of trees and the distant sound of sprinkler systems. How are you doing, really? Maria asked. Elena considered the question carefully. I'm cautiously optimistic. He's not what I expected, Maria. He's kind, and he seems genuine about wanting a partnership rather than just a wife. But, Elena smiled at her sister's perceptiveness. But I'm still waiting for the other shoe to drop. This all seems too good to be true. Men like him don't marry women like me without expecting something in return. Maybe he's just lonely, Maria suggested. Maybe he really did fall for your kindness at the hospital. Elena hoped that was true, but years of experience had taught her to be cautious about trusting people's motivations. Tomorrow she would start learning more about Alexander Blackwood and the life she had agreed to share with him. Tonight, she would listen to the unfamiliar sounds of her new home and try to imagine what the future might hold. In the distance, she heard Alex's voice calling Charlie in from the garden, followed by the dog's happy barking as they came back, inside. Despite her reservations, Elena found the sound comforting. For the first time in years, she fell asleep without worrying about unpaid bills or her family's next meal. The FBI agents arrived on a Thursday morning, their presence announced by Charlie's unusual alertness and the sound of unfamiliar cars in the driveway. Elena was in the kitchen with Mrs. Chen, learning to make dumplings when she heard Alex's tense voice greeting the visitors at the front door. Special Agent Martinez and Agent Thompson, she heard him say. "Come in." Elena's hands stilled in the dumpling dough. "Agent Martinez!" The name sent a chill through her, though she couldn't pinpoint why. Mrs. Chen placed a gentle hand on Elena's shoulder. "Perhaps you should wash your hands, dear," she said quietly. "I think they'll want to speak with you." 5 minutes later, Elena sat in the formal living room she rarely used, facing two people she couldn't see, but whose presence filled the space with official tension. Agent Martinez had a crisp, professional voice with a slight accent that reminded Elena of her own neighborhood. Agent Thompson spoke less, but had the kind of breathing that suggested a large man trying to appear non-threatening. "Mrs. Blackwood," Agent Martinez began, "we appreciate you taking time to speak with us. We know this situation is unusual." Elena nodded, her hands folded in her lap. "Alex explained that you're investigating his former business partner." "That's correct. What we need to understand is whether anyone has contacted you since your marriage, anyone asking questions about your husband or his business activities." Elena thought carefully. No one has contacted me directly, but... "But?" Agent Thompson prompted. "There have been some odd phone calls, hang-ups mostly, and Mrs. Chen mentioned that she's noticed the same car driving past the house several times, which is unusual in this neighborhood." Elena heard Alex shift in his chair across the room. This was apparently news to him. Agent Martinez's voice sharpened with interest. "Can you tell us more about these phone calls?" "They usually come in the evening around dinner time. When I answer, no one speaks, but I can hear background noise. Traffic, I think, and maybe music from a car radio. It happens maybe twice a week." "How long has this been going on?" Elena calculated. "About 3 weeks now." Agent Thompson spoke up. "Mrs. Blackwood, has your husband explained why we asked to meet with you? He said you needed to make sure I wasn't involved in anything suspicious, and that you wanted to know if anyone had approached me." "That's part of it," Agent Martinez said. "But there's another reason. Elena, may I call you Elena?" "Of course." "Elena, we have reason to believe that your husband's former associates may try to use you to pressure him into staying quiet about what he knows." Elena felt the temperature in the room drop. "What kind of pressure?" "The kind that involves threatening people's families," Agent Thompson said bluntly. Alex's voice cut through the room. "That's enough. Elena doesn't need to hear the details." "Actually, Alex," Elena said, her voice steadier than she felt, "I think I do need to hear the details. This is my life now, too," Agent Martinez continued. "The organization your husband's former partner worked with has a history of targeting family members to ensure cooperation. In your case, they might try to use your disability against you." Elena's hands clenched in her lap. "Meaning what, exactly?" "Meaning they might try to separate you from your support system, create situations where you're vulnerable and dependent on them for help, then use that leverage against your husband." Elena felt sick. "So I'm not just a wife, I'm a liability." "You're a person who deserves protection," Agent Martinez corrected gently, "which is why we're here. We want to set up some security measures and establish protocols in case anything unusual happens." Alex spoke up from across the room. "What kind of security measures?" Agent Thompson answered. "Nothing too obvious. Some surveillance equipment around the property, a panic button system, regular check-ins. We'll also provide Elena with a special phone that can track her location and connect directly to our office." Elena listened to them discuss her life as if she weren't in the room, making plans for her safety without asking what she wanted. Finally, she stood up. "Stop," she said firmly. "All of you, just stop talking about me like I'm not here." The room fell silent. Elena turned toward where she thought Agent Martinez was sitting. "You're telling me that I married into a situation where criminals might kidnap me to pressure my husband. You're telling me that my blindness makes me an easy target. You're telling me I need panic buttons and tracking devices to be safe in my own home." "Elena," Alex started, but she held up her hand. "I'm not finished. Agent Martinez, you said these. People might try to separate me from my support system. But here's what you don't understand about blind people. We're incredibly good at remembering details. We notice things sighted people miss because we rely on different senses. Elena began, pacing, her confidence growing. Those phone calls I mentioned? The background noise isn't just traffic and music. There's a specific sound, like a squeaky belt or loose fan. Always the same sound, which means it's probably the same car. The timing is always between 6:30 and 7 p.m., which suggests someone watching the house to know when we're having dinner. Agent Thompson leaned forward. What else have you noticed? Mrs. Chen mentioned a car driving by repeatedly. I've been paying attention to the sounds outside, and there's a vehicle that drives past every Tuesday and Friday, always around 10 in the morning. It has a diesel engine, probably a truck, and it slows down significantly when it passes our driveway. Agent Martinez was taking notes now. Anything else? Elena thought carefully. Yesterday, when I was in the garden with Charlie, he started growling at something near the back fence. Charlie never growls at delivery people or neighbors, but he was genuinely upset about something. When Alex investigated, he said there was nothing there, but I smelled cigarette smoke. Nobody in this house smokes. Alex's voice was tight with concern. Elena, why didn't you tell me about any of this? Elena turned toward him. Because until an hour ago, I thought I was just being paranoid. I thought maybe I was imagining threats because this whole situation seemed too good to be true, Agent. Martinez stood up. Elena, would you be willing to help us? Your observations could be crucial to identifying who's watching you. Help you how? By continuing to document what you notice and by wearing a wire during your daily activities. If someone does approach you, we'll have evidence. Elena felt the weight of the decision. And if I say no, Agent Thompson answered, then we do our best to protect you from a distance, but our ability to gather evidence and stop these people becomes much more limited. Elena thought about her family, about Maria starting college next month with money from Alex's payment, about her father finally able to sleep at night without worrying about bills. She thought about Alex, who despite his secrets had shown her nothing but kindness and respect. If I do this, she said slowly, I want some conditions. What conditions? Agent Martinez asked. First, my family doesn't know about any of this unless absolutely necessary. Second, if things get dangerous, you get me out immediately. No arguments. About gathering more evidence. Third, Alex doesn't get to make decisions about my safety without consulting me first. Elena turned toward where Alex was sitting. I'm not a victim to be protected, Alex. I'm your partner, and if we're going to face this together, it has to be as equals. Alex was quiet for a moment, then said, You're right. I'm sorry for trying to shield you from all of this. Agent Martinez gathered her papers. Elena, I think you're going to be more help than you realize. Most people in your situation would be paralyzed by fear. Elena smiled grimly. Agent Martinez, I've been navigating a world designed for sighted people my entire life. I've learned that the best defense against people who underestimate you is to prove them wrong. After the agents left, Elena and Alex sat in the garden while Charlie chased butterflies around the rose bushes. The afternoon sun warmed Elena's face, and she tried to memorize the peaceful moment, knowing that their quiet life was about to become much more complicated. Elena, Alex said softly, are you sure about this? It's not too late to change your mind. Elena reached over and found his hand. Alex, for the first time since I agreed to marry you, I feel like I'm making a choice based on complete information. Yes, I'm sure. What if something goes wrong? Elena squeezed his hand. Then we'll handle it together. But Alex, I need you to promise me something. Anything. No more secrets. If we're going to be partners in this, I need to know everything, even the scary parts. Alex lifted their joined hands and kissed her knuckles gently. I promise. No more secrets. As they sat in the garden, Elena heard the distant sound of a diesel engine slowing down as it passed their street. She didn't mention it to Alex. She would save that observation for Agent Martinez. For the first time since her marriage began, Elena felt like she had some control over her own destiny, even if that destiny was more dangerous than she had ever imagined. 2 months into their unusual marriage, Elena discovered that Alexander Blackwood had secrets. She first noticed it on a Tuesday morning when she was in the garden with Charlie, feeling her way around what Mrs. Chen had described as rose bushes. The sound of Alex's voice drifted from his office window above, but something was different about his tone. "I don't care what it costs," he was saying, his voice sharp with an anger she had never heard before. "That family has been living in that apartment for 15 years. You find another way to make the numbers work, or you find another job." Elena paused, her hands still on Charlie's warm fur. Alex had never spoken harshly to anyone in her presence. Even when frustrated with business calls, he maintained a professional calm. This glimpse of steel beneath his gentle exterior intrigued her. Later that morning, she knocked on his office door. "Come in," he called, and she heard him quickly shuffling papers. "Everything all right?" "You sounded upset earlier," she said, settling into the chair across from his desk. "Just work frustrations. One of my project managers wanted to evict a family to make room for higher-paying tenants. I don't operate that way." Elena heard something in his voice, a carefully controlled emotion that suggested there was more to the story. "Alex, can I ask you something personal?" "Of course." "Why affordable housing? I mean, really, why?" "Most wealthy people choose charities that make them look good at galas, not projects that actually help people day to day." Alex was quiet for a long time, and Elena could hear him turning something over in his hands, probably the stress ball Mrs. Chen had mentioned he kept on his desk. Finally, he spoke. "When I was 7, my parents lost everything. My father was a construction worker, my mother cleaned houses. We lived in a tiny apartment with paper-thin walls, and every month we wondered if we'd make rent." This was not the story Elena had been told before. "But you said they were social workers who inherited money." "That came later. When I was 12, my great-uncle died and left everything to my father, his only living relative. Suddenly, we went from wondering where our next meal would come from to having more money than we knew what to do with." Elena leaned forward. "That must have been overwhelming." "It was life-changing, but not in the way you might think. My parents never forgot what it felt like to be powerless, to have your entire life depend on the whims of landlords and bosses who saw you as disposable. When they became wealthy, they dedicated their lives to making sure other families didn't have to experience that fear." Elena felt pieces of a puzzle clicking into place. "And when they died, you continued their work." "I tried to. But Elena, there's something else you should know about me. About this house. About our arrangement." Elena's stomach tightened. Here it was, the other shoe she had been waiting to drop. Alex's chair creaked as he stood up and moved to the window. "I'm not just doing affordable housing projects. I'm also being investigated by the FBI." Elena's breath caught. "What?" 3 years ago, I discovered that one of my business partners was using our developments to launder money for a criminal organization. When I found out, I went to the authorities immediately. I've been cooperating with their investigation ever since." Elena's mind raced. "Are you in danger?" "I don't know. The people my former partner worked with aren't known for forgiveness. The FBI thinks they might try to use my personal life against me, which is part of why I've been so isolated." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. "Alex, are you telling me that you married me to create some kind of cover story? To make yourself seem more normal and less suspicious?" "No." Alex's response was immediate and forceful. "Elena, I swear to you, that's not why I approached your family. But I'd be lying if I said the timing wasn't influenced by the investigation." Elena stood up abruptly, Charlie immediately moving to her side, as if sensing her distress. "So what exactly are you saying?" Alex's footsteps approached her, then stopped a few feet away. "I'm saying that I genuinely fell for your kindness and strength at the hospital, but I'm also saying that when the FBI suggested I was too isolated, and that might make me seem suspicious, I realized approaching you might serve two purposes." Elena felt betrayed and confused. Two purposes. Getting to know the woman I couldn't stop thinking about, and creating a more normal life that wouldn't draw attention from dangerous people. Elena turned toward the door, but Alex's voice stopped. Elena, wait. There's more you need to know." She paused, her hand on the doorknob. "The money I used to pay your family's debts, it didn't come from my regular accounts. It came from funds I recovered when I exposed my partner's criminal activity. Money that was stolen from working families and small businesses. In a way, I was returning it to people who needed it." Elena felt tears threatening, though she wasn't sure if they were from anger or something else. "So I'm what? Some kind of charity case funded by blood money? You're a woman whose family was struggling because of an unfair system, and you deserved help regardless of where the money came from. But yes, I wanted that dirty money to do something clean and good." Elena pulled the door open, then stopped again. "Is there anything else I should know? Any other secrets? Any other ways this marriage is more complicated than you told me?" Alex was quiet for a moment. "The FBI wants to interview you. They want to make sure you're not involved in anything suspicious, and they want to know if anyone has approached you since the wedding." Elena laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Approached me? Alex, I'm blind, not invisible. If dangerous criminals were stalking me, don't you think I'd notice?" "Elena, please. I know this is a lot to process, but I need you to understand that, despite all the complications, my feelings for you are genuine." Elena felt Charlie's warm presence beside her and reached down to pet his head, grounding herself in the simple comfort of the gesture. "I need some time to think about all this." "Of course. But Elena, for your safety and mine, please don't discuss this with anyone outside this house until the investigation is complete." Elena nodded and left the office, making her way back to her room. As she walked through the elegant hallways of the mansion, she wondered if she had escaped one trap only to find herself in another. But unlike her family's financial desperation, this trap came with silk sheets and gourmet meals, making it harder to recognize the bars of the cage. That evening, she called Maria from her room, choosing her words carefully. "Maria, if something happened and I needed to come home quickly, would you and Papa be okay financially?" "Elena, what's wrong? You sound strange." Elena stared out the window she couldn't see, listening to the sounds of Alex and Charlie in the garden below. "Just promise me, if I ever call and say I need to come home, you won't ask questions until I'm there safely." "Elena, you're scaring me. Promise me." "I promise, but please tell me you're not in some kind of trouble." Elena heard Alex's laughter from the garden, the sound warm and genuine as he played with Charlie. The man who had just confessed to being involved with money launderers and FBI investigations was the same man who learned Braille to better understand her world, who spoke gently to elderly hospital patients, who refused to evict struggling families. "I don't know," Elena said honestly. "I really don't know." The confrontation came on a rainy Saturday morning, 6 weeks after Elena began working with the FBI. She was in the local grocery store with Mrs. Chen, wearing the wire hidden in her jacket button, when she heard footsteps approaching that made Charlie tense beside her. "Elena Blackwood?" The voice was smooth, friendly, with just a hint of an accent she couldn't place. Elena turned toward the voice, her hand instinctively moving to Charlie's head. "Yes? My name is Marcus Sullivan. I'm a friend of your husband's from his business ventures. I was hoping we could talk." Mrs. Chen stepped closer to Elena's side, and Elena could feel the older woman's protective energy. "I'm sorry, but I don't believe my husband has mentioned you," Elena said carefully. Marcus laughed, a sound that didn't reach his eyes, though Elena couldn't see them. Oh, I'm sure he hasn't. Alexander has become quite selective about which relationships he discusses at home. Elena felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning in the store. This was it, the approach the FBI had been waiting for. I'm afraid I'm not involved in my husband's business affairs, Elena said, trying to keep her voice steady. But that's exactly why I wanted to speak with you, Marcus continued. You see, your husband has been sharing some rather damaging stories about his former business partners, stories that could hurt a lot of innocent people. Elena heard Mrs. Chen's sharp intake of breath and Charlie's low growl barely audible beneath the ambient noise of the store. Mr. Sullivan, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I really don't know anything about my husband's business decisions. Of course you don't, Marcus said, his tone becoming more condescending. But here's the thing, Elena. May I call you Elena? Sometimes the people we love make choices that put everyone at risk. Your husband is about to testify in a federal case that could destroy many lives. Elena's training from the FBI sessions kicked in. Keep him talking, gather information, stay calm. I'm sorry to hear that, she said neutrally. But I still don't understand what this has to do with me. Marcus moved closer, and Elena could smell expensive cologne mixed with something else. The metallic scent of stress sweat that people often carried when they were nervous about what they were doing. It has to do with you because you could help us convince your husband to reconsider his testimony. You could help him understand that some secrets are better left buried. Elena felt Mrs. Chen's hand touch her arm gently, their predetermined signal that she should end the conversation and leave. Mr. Sullivan, I appreciate your concern, but I need to finish my shopping now. Mrs. Chen has been very patient with me today. Elena? Marcus's voice hardened slightly. I don't think you understand the gravity of the situation. Your husband's testimony could result in some very dangerous people going to prison. Those people have friends, family members who might feel that Alexander Blackwood owes them compensation for their losses. Elena's heart was racing, but she forced herself to remain calm. Are you threatening my husband, Mr. Sullivan? I'm trying to help your husband make a smart decision. But Elena, if he won't listen to reason, sometimes people need additional motivation to do the right thing. Elena heard footsteps approaching from behind Marcus, and suddenly Alex's voice cut through. The tension. Elena, is everything all right? Marcus's demeanor changed instantly, becoming jovial and fake. Alexander, what a coincidence running into your lovely wife here. I was just introducing myself. Elena heard the dangerous edge in Alex's voice when he replied, Marcus, I thought I made it clear that our business relationship was over. Business relationships are never really over, Alexander. They just evolve. Elena felt Alex move to her side, his presence protective but not possessive. Elena, are you ready to go? Yes, she said firmly. Mr. Sullivan was just leaving. Marcus chuckled. Of course. Elena, it was lovely meeting you. I'm sure we'll have another opportunity to chat soon. After Marcus left, Alex, Elena, and Mrs. Chen quickly finished their shopping and returned to the car. Elena waited until they were driving home before speaking. Alex, that man just threatened me to get to you. Alex's hands tightened on the steering wheel. I know, I heard the end of the conversation. We need to call Agent Martinez immediately. Already done, Mrs. Chen said from the back seat, holding up her phone. I texted her while you were talking to him. Elena felt a surge of gratitude for the older woman's quick thinking. Mrs. Chen, you were amazing back there. I've dealt with bullies before, dear. That man was definitely a bully. When they arrived home, Agent Martinez was already waiting in the driveway with Agent Thompson and two other agents Elena didn't recognize. As they gathered in the living room, Elena recounted every detail of the conversation while the agents recorded everything. Elena, you did perfectly, Agent Martinez said when she finished. The wire picked up everything clearly, and your responses were exactly what we hoped for. What happens now? Alex asked. Agent Thompson answered. Now we have Marcus Sullivan on tape making implied threats against a federal witness and his family. Combined with the surveillance evidence Elena has been helping us gather, we have enough to move forward with arrests. Elena felt a mixture of relief and continued anxiety. Does this mean it's over? It means the immediate threat is being dealt with, Agent Martinez said carefully. But Elena, Alex, you should know that this case may take months to fully resolve. There may be a trial, and you may need to testify. Elena nodded. I understand. Alex reached over and took her hand. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together. Agent Martinez gathered her files. There's something else you should know. Elena, your observations over the past 6 weeks helped us identify and track not just Marcus Sullivan, but an entire surveillance network. Your ability to notice details that sighted people miss was crucial to this investigation. After the agents left, Elena and Alex sat in their garden as the sun set, Charlie sleeping peacefully at their feet. The sounds of their neighborhood, sprinklers, distant traffic, children playing, created a symphony of normalcy that Elena had learned not to take for granted. Alex, she said softly, when this is all over, when the trials are finished and these people are in prison, what then? Alex was quiet for a moment. Then we figure out what kind of marriage we actually have. We've been through crisis mode for months now. Once things are calm, we'll discover who we are together when we're not just surviving. Elena smiled. I'd like that. I'd like to find out if the man I married when I was desperate is the same man I'd choose when I'm free. Alex lifted her hand and kissed it gently. Elena, I hope you know that no matter what brought us together, what I feel for you now is completely real. Elena turned toward him, reaching up to touch his face with her free hand. For the first time, she let herself really explore his features, the strong jaw, the worry lines around his eyes, the gentle smile she could feel beneath her fingertips. Alex, she whispered, I think I'm falling in love with you. Not because you saved my family, not because you gave me a beautiful home, but because you treated me like an equal when the world told you I was damaged goods. Alex leaned into her. Touch. Elena, I've been in love with you since that first day at the hospital, when I watched you help a frightened child find her mother. I just never imagined I'd be lucky enough for you to love me back. As they sat together in the gathering darkness, Elena realized that what had started as a desperate bargain had somehow become the foundation for something real and beautiful. The danger wasn't over, the trials ahead would be challenging, but for the first time since agreeing to marry a stranger, Elena felt like she was exactly where she belonged.